Greetings in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. It's me again, Brother G, in Christ by His mercy and grace. Just wanted to come to you with a couple of videos which I find pretty much interesting. And the question is this merely a coincidence, as many have put it? But is this a clear sign once again that the Lord is crying out and says, "Be ready, I am at the door"? So brothers and sisters, I find it so strange, you might call it coincidental, but that things are beginning to happen at the heart of the so-called powerful nations. The flood in Europe is a sign. Germany has been the financial strength of the entire Europe. Belgium itself has been the headquarters. Netherlands, we know what that one represents in terms of morality. China, they just don't want to know anything about the Bible. But here we are as floods begin to hit. But just before that, there's a video from a child which actually saw this thing happening and what might happen after all these events. So brothers and sisters, I just don't want to waste too much time. Let's just go straight into it. Put your comments down below and let me know what you think. May God keep you and bless you. Watch and pray is the key. Brother G out.
You've got to hear this, because I've just done my checks online because I didn't know anything, so I thought I'd give it, when she told me this, I thought I'd have a look to see what the internet says about China. And I'm blown away. Say it, Meg.
That there's going to be, in China, there's going to be a very bad earthquake.
So a big earthquake.
Yeah, and a very bad hurricane. A super bad hurricane.
Bad hurricane.
Yeah, and then it's a ginormous flood that covers over the houses. Even if it was a very tall one, it would cover it over. It'll be up to the clouds and up to the floor.
And what did Jesus tell you?
He said he's going to come.
You said he might come.
Yeah, he said he might come after the day that happens.
The flooding over the houses.
Yeah, after the day that
So I just did my check online, and they had a big earthquake. Then I found out after they had strong winds of hurricanes, and they've been still having shaking. And now they've got floods going on, and they're worried about summer floods. And we all know that there's a lot happening in China right now. I just thought this was really interesting, considering to how close we are to Rosh Hashanah, which I know that what Jesus told me about that being rapture time.
A nightmare is unfolding in central China. A year's worth of rain has fallen in just 3 days. 3 days. This rainfall has triggered floods, the worst floods in 1,000 years. And words are not enough to describe this disaster. Let me show you some pictures. Passengers trapped inside flooded subway trains. This happened in Zhengzhou, in the Henan province. The passengers were neck deep in rising water. They held onto the handles on the ceilings to avoid drowning. Take a look at this.
打电话给俺311，给俺311报警。这已经到大家不要说话，你们热不热呀？没说话，没说话，一直都来到海滩寺跟沙口路的中间段，海滩寺刚走过去。大家不要说话，你们热不热呀？没说话，没说话，一直都来到。
More than 600 people are said to have been rescued from this subway. Reports say some people died too, and that's not something we can confirm at this point. Zhengzhou is often called the iPhone city. That's because it hosts the world's biggest production base for iPhones. Now it is the city of China's worst floods in a millennium. More than a dozen cities in Henan are affected. Reports say 25 people may have died. 200,000 have been displaced. These numbers are expected to go up. Just look at the devastation. People are being swept away by the flood waters. This video clip was doing the rounds on Weibo today. A person caught in the flood waters, seen stumbling and falling. Again, this is from the Henan province. Cars floating in the flood waters like they're fish. Look at this one. A driver in Zhengzhou trapped inside his car, braving the surging waters. This looks catastrophic, but it's not the worst. There's more in store. Several dams and reservoirs have breached their warning levels. The Chinese military has issued a warning. In fact, they fear that a dam could collapse any time. They're talking about the Yehetan Dam. It sits right at the center of China in the Henan province. The floods have caused a 20-meter breach in this dam. The Chinese military's assessment says this dam could, quote-unquote, collapse any time. Soldiers have been dispatched to prevent it. Meanwhile, there are concerns that the state, as always, is hiding the truth, that China is not revealing the full extent of the crisis vis-a-vis its dams. Conflicting reports have emerged. They raise questions about the health of the dams in this area. Earlier, China's state broadcaster CGTN announced that a dam near Zhengzhou has collapsed. Reports say the Chinese Ministry of Emergency Management also made a similar announcement that the dam has collapsed. But now, these reports have been retracted. Earlier this week, flooding led to the collapse of 2 dams in Inner Mongolia. The Chinese state media released some pictures. The floodwaters rose so high they broke the dam. What's causing all of this? Climate change is one reason, yes. Extreme weather events have been seen across the world, including in China. But in the case of China, there's one more reason. China's dam boom making these floods worse. This is what scientists say. They believe that China's widespread dam construction has exacerbated the crisis. It has made these freak weather events worse. How do they explain this? When dams are built, connections between rivers and lakes are cut off. This disrupts the floodplains, the areas that used to absorb water from the rains. They're disrupted, hence the floods. Experts have been raising red flags for years now, but China has not stopped its dam building spree. In the year 2019, China had more than 23,000 large dams, 23,000. They represent 41% of all dams in the world. By 2020, China had more than 98,000 dams. More dams than any other country in the world. Most of the older dams are no longer safe. They're poorly maintained. You might remember what happened last year. China experienced its worst flooding in decades. Around 40 million people in more than 24 provinces were affected. The floods caused damage worth well over $11 billion to the Chinese economy. Serious concerns were raised about the safety of the Three Gorges Dam in Hubei. It's the biggest dam in the world, the Three Gorges Dam. The birth of this dam alone flooded 13 cities, 140 towns, and more than 1,300 villages. A total of 1.3 million people were displaced. And once the dam was completed, it caused only more damage. In last year's flood in Hubei, more than 150 people died. More than 3 million people were displaced. The Chinese economy suffered losses worth billions of dollars. The numbers make it clear these dams are a liability. Why then does China want to build more of them? Because China wants to control how the rivers behave. Beijing wants to decide how the waters of these rivers flow. Consider this. China has built as many as 11 dams along the Mekong River. The Mekong River is the 12th longest river in the world. Besides China, this river flows into Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Thousands of livelihoods in these countries depend on the waters from the Mekong. But now these people are struggling. That's because China is using these dams to dry up the water supply and control it. With every passing year, Chinese dams are holding more and more water. And this is leaving territories on the downstream dry. Often it is said that future wars will be fought over water. And China, it seems, has already begun laying the groundwork for these wars. It is building more dams to control more rivers, even if that means the loss of lives of Chinese citizens. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move. The end of times is a mythical favorite. How life on this planet will come to an end. Every religion has a different version, every scientist has a different theory, and every conspiracy theorist has a captivating tale. But they all agree on one thing: it will be dramatic and biblical. Maybe something like this. What you're looking at are not European canal cities. These are towns overrun by floods. You can barely see the streets. They're completely submerged underwater. Entire houses have been swept away. 3 countries are facing the worst of it: Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands. We call such events natural disasters, forces beyond human control. All we can do is hope for the best and ride it out. But these floods are not completely natural. Look at the scale of this event. Parts of Western Germany got 148 liters of rain per square meter in 48 hours. The average is 80 liters for the entire month of July. So that's almost 2 months' rain in 2 days. Nature, we know, is erratic, but not that erratic. So what is causing these supercharged downpours? Climate change. We let the experts break down the science behind it.
In a warmer world, the atmosphere can hold more moisture. And of course, as there is more water, more moisture in the atmosphere, rainfall events can become more extreme. So we've seen before that extreme rainfall events have become more frequent because of climate change.
All the climate change deniers out there, this is your proof. Climate change is real and it is killing people. More than 100 have died in this deluge. Thousands have fled their homes. And once the water retreats, Europe will have a multi-billion-dollar bill. That's the cost of climate change: disruption, death, and despair. And Europe is not out of the woods yet. In Germany, the rivers have burst their banks. They're spilling into major roads and bridges, like this one near Erfstadt. And in Belgium, railway tracks have been swept away. This train derailed after being hit by a wave of flooding. Officials say it could take weeks to complete the repairs. And remember, transport is key to evacuation. So these blocked roads and railways could complicate rescue operations. Right now, helicopters are swooping over flooded streets. They're searching for any signs of life, families stranded on rooftops or residents who set out on foot. These pictures from Europe are worrying enough. Unfortunately, we have more. Last week, the American East Coast was battered by a tropical storm. Within days, New York City was flooded. The residents were wading through knee-deep water. It seeped into the underground subway stations. These are called flash floods. They don't build up gradually. Just a few hours of intense rain can trigger a flash flood. They're extremely dangerous because there's no warning. Just 350 kilometers from this deluge, there is a drought situation. That's right. Washington has declared a state of drought emergency. Nature cannot explain this kind of freak weather, but climate change can. We've seen heat waves in Canada and South Asia, the heaviest rainfall since measurement began in Tokyo, the worst floods of the century in Europe. All of this in a span of less than 2 months. Do you still think the planet is fine? We are in the summer of climate change. Freak events are becoming common. Supercharged rains, heat waves on steroids, monster cyclones and storms, which means the window of action is closing. Quite simply, it's now or never. Such catastrophes can move leaders to action. German politicians, for one, are lining up to blame climate change. The Vice Chancellor said the floods must serve as an incentive for climate action.
This is a natural disaster. But the fact that this natural disaster is taking place in this way is certainly connected to the fact that climate change is progressing at a speed that we have observed for a while. That must be another incentive and also an obligation for all those who have become victims here, for us to do everything we can to stop man-made climate change and prevent such disasters in this scale.
We've heard these promises before, but with time they're forgotten. Until the next disaster strikes and the cycle repeats again, climate change is a footnote at every summit, a punching bag in geopolitics. When leaders want to appear savvy and hip, they talk about climate change. This year, we have a chance to change that again. The United Nations Climate Conference is scheduled for November 2021. World leaders are expected to review the Paris Accord goals, possibly set new targets to bring down emissions. The summit takes place in Glasgow, Scotland, the same city that was inundated by flash floods last month. But people have a short memory these days. Even existential threats are soon forgotten. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.